You don't remember being born. But the first few years of your life shaped nearly everything about you. Your ability to trust, to feel safe, to connect with other humans. Modern parenting has an entire industry built around getting those years right. Books, apps, sleep schedules, developmental milestones, screen time limits. An endless stream of advice about what your child needs and when they need it. And yet, for roughly 300,000 years, none of that existed. No pediatricians, no parenting philosophies, no debates about attachment theory or helicopter parenting, or free-range kids. Ancient humans raised children without a single rule book, and those children survived, thrived, and eventually became every person alive on Earth today. So what did they actually do? The answer is stranger, warmer, and more surprising than you might expect, and some of it will make you question almost everything modern culture tells you a child needs. Your ancestors didn't think of childhood the way you do. There was no concept of a developmental stage mapped against a chart on a pediatrician's wall. There was no separation between the world of adults and the world of children. A child was simply a small human who was gradually becoming a larger one, embedded from the very first breath inside the full texture of daily life. Anthropologist David Lancy at Utah State University has spent decades studying childhood across cultures and deep history. He calls the dominant Western model of parenting, where the child is the center of the household, where parents narrate every action, schedule every activity, and treat childhood as a precious, protected phase, the weird model. Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic. He argues this model is historically unusual to the point of being an outlier. For the vast majority of human existence, children were not the center of anything. They were participants. From the earliest days of life, an infant in a hunter-gatherer band was almost never alone. Not for a single hour, not for a single night. Your ancient ancestor wasn't placed in a separate sleeping space. There were no cribs, no nurseries, no baby monitors. The infant was carried, held against a body, pressed against skin, moved constantly with the motion of whoever was carrying them. Anthropologist James McKenna at the University of Notre Dame studied the physiology of mother-infant co-sleeping across cultures and found that the rhythmic breathing of a nearby adult actually regulates an infant's own breathing patterns. The body of the caregiver, in a very literal sense, was the infant's first environment. When your ancestor's child cried, it was fed, not on a schedule, not after a timed interval, immediately or close to it. Studies of contemporary forager groups, the Hadza of Tanzania, the Kunsan of the Kalahari, show that infants are nursed on demand, sometimes dozens of times per day, often for 3 to 4 years. The idea of a feeding schedule would have been as alien to your ancient ancestor as the idea of scheduling when to breathe. And the holding never really stopped. Anthropological records and observations of modern forager groups consistently show that young children in these societies are in physical contact with another human, mother, father, sibling, grandmother, cousin, for the overwhelming majority of their waking hours. Not because ancient parents were more loving than modern ones, because isolation, for a small primate on an open savanna surrounded by predators, was effectively a death sentence. The infant's scream was not manipulation. It was survival communication. And everyone in the band understood it that way. Here's where it gets interesting. Because your ancient ancestors didn't raise children in nuclear families. The idea of 2 adults in a private dwelling solely responsible for 1 or 2 children, that structure would have been unrecognizable to a hunter-gatherer. Children were raised by everyone. Anthropologist Sarah Blaffer-Hrdy at the University of California, Davis, developed a framework she calls cooperative breeding, or alloparenting. The prefix allo comes from the Greek word for other. Alloparents are the non-biological caregivers who invest in a child's survival. Aunts, uncles, older siblings, grandmothers, unrelated band members. HRD argues that Homo sapiens is one of the only primates where alloparenting is not just common, but structurally essential to survival. Our infants are uniquely helpless, and our gestation and weaning periods relative to brain development mean that human children require more sustained care than almost any other animal on the planet. In practice, this meant a child in a hunter-gatherer band was never the sole responsibility of its biological parents. Grandmothers, in particular, played a critical role. Evolutionary biologist Kristen Hawkes at the University of Utah studied grandmothering behavior among the Hadza and proposed what is now called the grandmother hypothesis. The idea that human longevity, especially in women past reproductive age, evolved specifically because grandmothers who helped provision and care for grandchildren dramatically increased those children's survival rates. You live as long as you do, in part, because your ancient grandmothers were indispensable. So who taught the children? Everyone, and no one, in the formal sense of the word. There were no classrooms. There were no lessons scheduled for specific hours of the day. A child learned by being present, by watching adults perform every task of daily life, by gradually being handed responsibility, by being allowed to try and fail and try again, without a structured curriculum guiding the process. Developmental psychologist Peter Gray at Boston College, who has written extensively on self-directed learning in hunter-gatherer societies, points out that children in these groups played almost constantly, but their play was not separate from adult life. It was intertwined with it. Children made miniature tools and practiced with them. They accompanied hunters and observed. They tended fires under supervision. They cared for younger siblings. They listened to every conversation adults had because they were always physically present for those conversations. There were no topics considered too adult for children's ears. Death, birth, violence, sex, grief, conflict, all of it unfolded in the open, within earshot and eyesight of every child in the group. Not because ancient humans were careless, because concealment in a band of 30 people sharing an open camp was simply impossible. And so children developed what researchers describe as an unusually early and sophisticated understanding of the full range of human experience. Grief was not hidden. Death was visible. The body of a person who had died was not whisked away. Children were present for it. Discipline worked differently too. Physical punishment in hunter-gatherer societies is remarkably rare. Jean Liebloff, who spent years living with the Yecuana people of Venezuela, documented in her book the continuum concept that adults almost never struck children or raised their voices at them. Instead, misbehavior was handled through a combination of ignoring, gentle redirection, and, perhaps most powerfully, social consequence. In a band where everyone is watching, where your reputation is built over years of close proximity, the pressure to behave was ambient. It didn't require enforcement. It was the air the child breathed. There was also remarkably little pressure to perform. Hunter-gatherer children were not evaluated against milestones. They were not compared to other children. They were not praised extravagantly for ordinary achievements. And they were not pushed toward mastery before they were ready. David Lancy describes this as a cultivation model versus an acceptance model. Western parenting, he argues, largely operates on cultivation. The child is a project to be actively shaped and optimized. Hunter-gatherer parenting operated on acceptance. The child is a developing person who would, in time, find their own place within the group. And yet, somehow, these children became extraordinary. They grew into adults who could track animals across unmarked terrain, navigate by stars, identify hundreds of edible plants, construct shelter from raw materials, read weather patterns, manage complex social dynamics within a group, and survive in environments that would kill most modern humans within days. They didn't learn those skills in structured lessons. They absorbed them because they were always there, always watching, always inside the full experience of adult life from their first coherent memories onward. Think about that the next time you wonder whether your child is on schedule. The most striking thing about ancient childhood is not how different it was. It's how much of it your body still remembers. The infant who screams to be held isn't being manipulative. The toddler who follows every adult they trust from room to room isn't being clingy. The child who wants to be present for every conversation, every task, every moment of adult life isn't being difficult. They are doing exactly what 300,000 years of human evolution designed them to do. They are trying to learn the world by living inside it. Your ancestors knew that. They didn't need a book to tell them, and neither, it turns out, did you.